Absolute monarchy is a term you hear thrown around in history class in obscure parts of the internet quite a lot. But what is an absolute monarchy? Absolute monarchy is a monarchy ruled by one person almost completely. I say almost because it is literally impossible for one person to rule a country alone. A more accurate definition would be a monarchy where the king or queen, or whatever title they may have, has absolute authority and can do basically whatever they want. They're not restricted by the law, for they are the law. Some people think that a traditional European monarchy that you would have seen in the Middle Ages was an absolute monarchy, but this is false. In a traditional monarchy, the king's authority is restricted by the clergy and nobility, who have a similar amount of power to the king, and if they don't like him, they can replace him. However, in an absolute monarchy, the king solidifies his control over the clergy and nobility. For example, Peter the Great of Russia declared himself to be the leader of the Russian Orthodox Church and changed the way nobility worked in a way that benefited both the nobles and himself. Perhaps one of the best examples of an absolute monarchy was King Louis XIV. He was one of the most powerful individuals in human history, as he centralized the nobility by literally getting them as close to him as possible through the creation of the Palace of Versailles. At the Palace of Versailles was a king's court, where major nobles gathered and lived under King Louis. This made it so that King Louis could keep a close eye on the nobility and keep control for himself. By doing this, Louis eventually led to the demise of the French aristocracy, as only decades later the French Revolution would occur, toppling the French tradition that had gone back hundreds of years. All of this begs a question. Why did kings become absolute? The reason was because these kings believed it was their duty to rule absolutely. They believed in divine right, meaning that the king gained his power not from the church, not from the nobility, not from the people, but from God himself. Therefore, getting in the way of the king was getting in the way of God's ultimate plan for humanity. Unsurprisingly, many absolute monarchs were Protestant, as absolute monarchs viewed the clergy's authority as lesser than their own. Examples include King James VI and I, who, yes, they were the exact same person, he just had both titles, King Henry VIII, Carolus Rex, Frederick the Great, etc. Ironically enough, the Pope himself is considered an absolute monarch because he has absolute authority over the Vatican and a great deal of authority over the Roman Catholic Church as a whole. It would be inaccurate to say absolute monarchies were ever really the norm. They usually were created when European monarchs consolidated power for themselves from the clergy and nobility, which usually just fell apart as soon as a monarch was dead. Many still believe absolute monarchy is a synonym for a traditional monarchy, and it isn't uncommon for online base tradcaths to adopt absolute monarchy as a part of their ideology as opposed to a truly traditional Christian monarchy. Of course, what it means to be a traditional monarchy varies from place to place, as that term could be used to describe a king who serves for the clergy and nobility, or it could also describe a nomadic warlord, depending on what country you're from. On the contrary, an absolute monarchy is a rather universal term, as it has been or can be tried pretty much anywhere and everywhere. Hopefully, this overview cleared some things up and answered the question, what is an absolute monarchy? Thank you, and goodbye.